I still remember the color of the light that day. The kind that slides through old blinds like thin knives of gold, hitting the dust in the air and making it look like smoke. The TV was on low, an old rerun humming in the background, and the smell of strong coffee clung to the air. I had just ironed a pale pink dress, the one I'd bought to wear to my son's wedding. It was hanging by the closet door, still warm from the iron, like it had a heartbeat of its own. That was the moment I decided to call Evan. Nothing dramatic, just a mother checking in. I dialed his number, half smiling, already picturing how he'd tease me. "Mom, relax, we'll tell you the date soon." But when the FaceTime connected, it wasn't my son who answered. It was Alina. Her face filled the screen. Perfect makeup, white blouse, sunlight spilling across her shoulder. She smiled that tight little smile she saves for when she's pretending to be kind. "Oh, hi Jessica," she said, her tone sugary, careful, polite. Then she tilted her head just a little, that same way she does when she's about to deliver bad news wrapped in perfume. "We got married yesterday," she said, her voice almost playful. "Just a small thing. We only invited special people." For a second, I thought the call had frozen. The sound dropped out, the air around me thickened. Special people. I stood there, holding the phone like it suddenly weighed 100 pounds. The corners of my mouth twitched, like I might smile back, but something inside me was already cracking, silent and sharp. On the screen, she was still smiling, waiting for a reaction. Behind her, I could see the edge of a dining table, covered with champagne glasses and flowers that weren't mine. A man's hand Evans brushed past her shoulder. He didn't even look at the camera. Didn't say he. Didn't say Mom. He just disappeared into the background. My voice came out smaller than I meant it to. "Yesterday?" "Yeah." She laughed softly, like I'd missed some harmless joke. "We wanted something intimate. Just family, you know. The people closest to us." The words hit like a slow punch, no impact at first, just a deep ache blooming inside my ribs. I forced a nod, pretending I understood. "That's wonderful," I heard myself say. "Congratulations." The call ended with a chirpy, "Thanks, Jessica," and a little wave. Then the screen went black, and the reflection staring back at me looked like someone else. I stood there for a long time, phone in one hand, the other gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. The envelope I'd been saving for their wedding, 5 crisp $100 bills, and a handwritten card that said, "To start your new life together," was still sitting on the table. I'd written it weeks ago, practicing my penmanship like it mattered. Next to it was a grocery list with her favorite things: almond milk, that fancy cereal she liked, the kind of olive oil I'd buy because she once said it made her skin glow. All the small, ridiculous ways I tried to be part of their world. And now, apparently, I wasn't part of anything at all. I walked to the closet and looked at the dress again. Soft pink. Mid-sleeve. Simple. Dignified. The kind of dress a mother wears when she wants to look nice, but not compete with the bride. I'd pictured myself standing beside Evan, smiling through happy tears, holding Alina's bouquet for a second, maybe even hearing her call me Mom. Instead, the dress hung there like a joke I hadn't realized I'd told. It's strange how fast humiliation can turn to numbness. It took maybe 30 seconds. 30 seconds for the anger to flicker behind my eyes, for my chest to go hollow, for the tears to dry up before they even started. I thought about the rent payments I'd sent them every month for the past 3 years automatically, without a word. The furniture I'd bought when they moved into that tiny apartment in Bay Ridge. The grocery bags I'd left by their door when Evan told me Alina had lost her job. Every small kindness replayed in my mind, not as memories but as receipts. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere down 86th Street. It sounded far away, but close enough to rattle the window glass. I realized I was shaking. I put the phone down, careful not to drop it. The apartment felt too quiet now. No TV, no hum of the fridge, no street noise, just that heavy silence that comes right before a storm breaks. I sat on the edge of the couch and tried to breathe. The envelope with the wedding gift stared back at me from the coffee table, next to a stack of old utility bills. My thumb traced the raised letters on the card. "To Evan and Alina with all my love." That was before I understood what love meant to them. I wanted to call him back. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why. But what would I say? Why wasn't I special? That kind of question doesn't beg for an answer, it begs for dignity. And I wasn't ready to beg. So instead, I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured myself the rest of the cold coffee from the pot. It tasted bitter, burnt at the edges. Through the window, the sky was bruised, half sunset, half storm. I caught my reflection in the glass. An older woman, hair pinned back too neatly, eyes rimmed red but dry. There was no anger yet, just a hollow awareness, like watching the lights go out in your own house. That's when my phone buzzed again. A message from Alina. "Hey Jessica, could you send the rent transfer tonight? The landlord's being a jerk again." No apology. No mention of the wedding. Just money. I stared at that text for a long time, my thumb hovering above the keyboard. And in that silence, something shifted. The grief curdled into something colder, sharper. I typed one sentence. "Didn't I tell you? I only help special people." And I pressed send. For a few seconds I just watched the 3 little dots blink, typing, stopping, typing again. Then nothing. Message read. No reply. That's when it hit me, this wasn't about a forgotten invitation. It was about erasure. About being quietly deleted from my own son's life, like a line in a document no one reads anymore. The kind of betrayal that doesn't come with shouting or slammed doors, just silence. Polite. Deliberate silence. The kind that makes you disappear without anyone noticing you're gone. Somewhere deep inside, I felt a click. A small, steady lock turning. I walked back to the closet and touched the pink dress one last time. The fabric was cool now, lifeless. Then I closed the door, slow and quiet, like tucking a coffin shut. I didn't cry. Not that night. Not yet. But I whispered something under my breath. A sentence that came out like a promise, or maybe a warning. They think I'm done. Pause. I looked at the silent phone on the table, still lit with Alina's last message. Then I said it again, softer this time. They're about to find out who I am. And the screen went dark. It's funny, the things that stay with you. For me, it's the sound of the radiator hissing in winter and the smell of cheap instant coffee at 5 in the morning. That's what the last few years of my life sounded like, small, steady noises of someone trying to keep a family from falling apart. I used to wake before the sun, wrap my robe tighter, and check my bank app before my first sip of coffee. Every first Monday of the month, like clockwork, $540 went straight into Evan and Alina's account. Rent money, no questions, no reminders. Just quiet responsibility, like brushing your teeth or paying a light bill. It wasn't charity, it was love disguised as logistics. 3 years of that. 34 months of covering their rent. About $18,000, give or take. I used to write it down on a yellow legal pad, every transfer in neat handwriting, a small checkmark beside each one. Then came the groceries, $180 a month, give or take. When Alina lost her job, I'd fill their fridge with frozen meals, fruit, and milk. I remember one afternoon lugging 2 grocery bags up their narrow apartment stairs, my knees aching, but Alina met me at the door with a smile that made it all feel worth it. "Jessica, you're a lifesaver," she said. And I believed her. There were the just this once payments too, the dentist bill, the broken phone, the interview suit. Those small emergencies that never really stopped coming. I never made them feel like debts. I'd just say, "Don't worry, honey, I got you." Because that's what mothers do. They get you, even when you forget to get them. I bought them a used sofa once, cream-colored, soft, nothing fancy. Evan said he'd pay me back when the bonus came through. I told him to forget it. "You've got a home to build," I said. "I've already had mine." I remember the pride in my chest when I saw them sitting on it the first time, eating takeout, laughing. That was my victory, their laughter. Birthdays, holidays, little things. 100 here, a gift card there, $2,000 over the years, maybe more. None of it ever felt like giving. It felt like purpose. I wasn't rich. I worked part-time bookkeeping for a dentist's office off 86th Street. My shoes were worn, my coat had seen better days. But I liked knowing that every number on that legal pad meant my son and his wife had a roof, a meal, a chance. I gave so they could breathe. They used my breath to run. Still, I was proud. That's the thing people never understand about mothers like me. We don't give because we're weak. We give because it's who we are, because the thought of our children going without feels worse than any empty wallet. There's a kind of moral clarity in that. It's not about being thanked. It's about knowing you did right, even when no one noticed. But sometimes I'd catch a flicker of something in Alina's eyes. A flash of irritation when I'd bring over groceries instead of cash. Or the way she'd say, "Oh, Jessica, you didn't have to," like she was brushing off an obligation instead of receiving a kindness. Once, she called me sweet, the way you talk to an old neighbor who tells the same story twice. I laughed it off, but it stung. Maybe that was the first hairline crack in the glass. Small enough to ignore, big enough to grow. There were quiet nights I'd sit at my kitchen table, tallying up the numbers on that yellow pad. $540 rend X 34 months, 10 à 8,36 dollars. Groceries, $5,400. Emergencies, $3.2. Furniture, $1,050. Gifts, $2,000. Total, around $30,000. $30,000. I used to smile at the total. "Look at that," I'd whisper. I kept them afloat. Now, thinking back, it reads like an obituary. A record of all the ways I mistook giving for belonging. If you've ever given everything to someone who later turned away, you'll understand this part. That strange mix of pride and loneliness, of doing the right thing while wondering if anyone even saw you doing it. Thank you for listening, for keeping stories like this alive. Every small act of kindness still matters. It always does. One night, just before everything unraveled, Alina came by alone to drop off a thank you card. She was polite, sweet, distant. The kind of sweetness that feels like it's hiding something. At the door, she hugged me quickly and said, "You don't have to worry about us anymore, Jessica. We're figuring things out." I smiled, but something about the way she said "don't worry" made my stomach twist. I didn't know it yet, but that was the last time she'd ever stand in my doorway. The next time I'd hear her voice, it would be through a phone screen, smiling, calm, telling me I wasn't special. And somewhere, deep inside, I think I already knew the peace I'd built was about to break. It started with a sound. A ping. The kind of harmless little phone notification that can split your whole life in two. I was still sitting at the kitchen table, the yellow pad in front of me, my pen hovering over the total $30,010 when my phone lit up. Instagram. I didn't mean to open it. I wasn't looking for trouble. But there it was, Evan's name. Alina's tag. The glittering skyline of Manhattan behind them. Her in a white dress, his hand on her waist. Champagne flutes. Rose petals. A caption. "Yesterday was perfect. Number chosen, family number. Forever grateful." Chosen family. I scrolled with a kind of sick curiosity I didn't know I had. Her parents were in the pictures, smiling wide, holding hands. Her brother, her sister, friends I'd never met. Even the officiant looked happy. Everyone was there. Everyone but me. Evan's face looked different, relaxed, almost relieved. Like a man who'd just crossed a finish line. I recognized the suit jacket. I'd bought it for him 6 months ago when he said he had a job interview. That was the moment it hit. The slap I never saw coming. Not a loud betrayal. A quiet one. The kind that doesn't scream, it just erases you. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. My heart hadn't. It was pounding so loud I could hear it echo in my throat. I called him. He picked up on the third ring. "Mom," he said. His voice was flat, rehearsed, like he'd been practicing for this conversation. "So, when were you planning to tell me?" There was a pause, long, clumsy, cowardly. Then, "It was intimate, Mom. Just the two of us and the witnesses. Alina didn't want a big thing." I almost laughed. A big thing? A rooftop with champagne and photographers? My breath caught in my chest, somewhere between a sob and a scream. "Intimate," I repeated, "with her parents, her family, her friends." "Please don't make this harder than it has to be," he said. And right there, in that single sentence, I felt the final thread snap. I had carried him for 9 months, raised him alone for 35 years, kept him fed, warm, alive, and somehow I was the one making things hard. I looked around the kitchen, the old curtains, the humming refrigerator, the envelope on the table. Inside it, $500 and a card that said, "To start your life together." I picked it up, turned it in my hands, then dropped it. It landed on the floor with a dull little slap, the sound of something small but final. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything good and left the shell. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood there, staring at that envelope, realizing it meant nothing now. That was when the phone pinged again. A message from Alina. "Hey Jessica, could you run the rent today? The landlord's strict." I read it twice, 3 times. No, thank you. No, how are you? Just business. The edges of my vision went white. My hand was trembling, but my voice when it came was steady. I typed one line. Didn't I tell you? I only help special people. Delivered. Read. Silence. I stared at the screen, waiting for dots that never came. The apartment felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere down the block, cutting through the quiet like a blade. The refrigerator clicked off. Even the air felt still, like it was holding its breath. And then the anger came. Not loud, not wild. Just, precise, cold. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of losing them. I was afraid of how much of myself I had already lost keeping them. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that their betrayal made you question your own worth, you're not alone. Thank you for being here. For listening. Stories like these. They're how we remind each other that truth, somehow, always finds its way home. That night I turned off every light in the apartment. The pink dress still hung by the closet, its shadow long and pale against the wall. I sat on the couch, the glow from the city bleeding through the blinds, and whispered to the empty room. They think they broke me, but they just taught me how to stop bleeding. And then, silence. Heavy, clean, absolute, the kind that comes before a storm. The morning after the call, the silence in my apartment was almost alive. Not peaceful, not gentle, just thick. Even the walls seemed to avoid me, as if they'd grown tired of hearing my voice. I moved slowly, careful not to make too much noise like sound itself might break me. The coffee pot hissed, then went quiet again. I poured half a cup and set it down on the counter. It went cold before I ever touched it. My phone buzzed once, twice. I didn't look. I knew it was them, or worse, nobody at all. So I let it ring, then ring again, until it didn't anymore. The whole apartment felt foreign. Every object, the framed photo of Evan at his graduation, the little ceramic bird Alina once gave me for Mother's Day, felt like it belonged to someone else's life. Someone I'd outlived. I spent the morning folding the pink dress back into the plastic it came in. The zipper caught halfway down. It always did. I smoothed the fabric flat, my hands trembling over the soft crease at the waist. For a moment, I thought about keeping it out, maybe wearing it someday, even if just to prove it wasn't a mistake to buy it. But I couldn't. The color looked foolish now. I tucked it away in the closet, behind my winter coats, where I wouldn't have to see it. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a heartbeat stopping. After that, I cleaned. The kind of cleaning that isn't really about dirt, it's about control. I washed the same cup 3 times, wiped the counters until they shone, rearranged a drawer that didn't need rearranging. Every small movement was an attempt to quiet the storm inside my chest. By noon, I was exhausted from standing still. Outside, I could hear muffled laughter from the hallway. Neighbors coming and going, bags rustling, doors opening, closing, life moving forward without me. When I finally stepped outside to get the mail, Miss Torres from across the hall was sitting on the stoop. She didn't say a word, just looked at me for a long moment, then poured half her coffee into a thermos cap and placed it beside me. "Drink," she said softly. I nodded. No words, no tears. We sat like that for a while, 2 women staring at the street, pretending to watch the buses go by. The rest of the day passed like fog. I made soup I didn't eat. I turned on the TV and muted it, just so the flickering light would make the room look less empty. I thought about calling my sister, but I didn't know what I'd say. How do you explain being erased by your own child? Around 5 p.m., I caught my reflection in the kitchen window, my face ghosted against the city lights outside. The bags under my eyes looked deeper, my mouth a little tighter, my shoulders bent, as if carrying a weight that had no shape but all the heaviness in the world. That night I tried to sleep, but the silence kept me awake. Every creak of the radiator sounded like a memory. Evan's voice calling me, "Mom." Alina laughing from the other room. The sound of their footsteps when they used to visit rare, but enough to make me feel like I still belonged somewhere. Now it was just me, the tick of the clock, and the hum of the city below. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, tracing the cracks in the plaster like a map of everything that had gone wrong. How did I not see it coming? Was I really that blind? Each question fell like a stone in my stomach, heavy and cold. At one point, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the silence had gotten so loud it started to echo back my thoughts. If you've ever sat in a room so quiet it started to echo your thoughts, you'll understand this silence. Thank you to those who keep listening. Your kindness gives voice to people who've been forgotten, who sit alone in their pain, waiting to be seen again. Near midnight, I went to the window. Snow had started to fall slow, heavy flakes that made everything look clean, even the cracked sidewalk below. I pressed my hand against the cold glass and whispered, "I'm still here." It wasn't defiance. It wasn't hope. Just a simple fact. And somehow, that was enough to keep breathing. The next morning, the city sounded sharper, as if someone had turned up the edges. I walked to the bank with the kind of calm that makes people move out of your way. Inside, the printer hummed like a distant train. Mr. Patel slid a stack of pages toward me, auto transfers, dates, amounts, neat as a ledger. His eyes were soft in a way that landed heavier than kin. "Mrs. Rivera," he said. He always used my last name with respect. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I said. We canceled everything. I set new passwords no one could guess. Two-factor, fresh accounts, paper statements turned off, alerts turned on. When Mr. Patel stood to shake my hand, he held it a heartbeat longer than necessary. The printer clicked off. The foyer clock ticked. For once, I didn't feel old. I felt precise. On the walk home, the cold tried to crawl into my sleeves. I let it. Sometimes clarity needs a little winter. My door was unlocked. That was the first tell. The second was the quiet too still, like a stage waiting for the first line. I stepped into my living room and found Evan at the table, shoulders squared like a boy pretending to be a man, Alina pacing in her good boots, and a gray suit attorney already seated, my personal papers fanned out in front of him like cards he meant to play against me. "Mom," Evan started, voice low, rehearsed. "We're worried." Habersenk. Alina lifted her chin, the light from the window laying a small theatrical halo on her hair. "Jessica, we've only come because we love you. You've been confused lately." She let the word hang, sweet as poison. "We want you to be safe." The lawyer placed a folder between us and turned the top page. "This is a temporary power of attorney, purely administrative. Just until you stabilize. We'll help with bills, groceries, medical choices." Every word was a dentist drill. Confusion, safety, stabilize, a soft, competent voice, all the right lies. I pulled out a chair and sat. The radiator hissed its long, steady line. I watched their eyes flick not at me but at the labels on my folders left from last night. Mortgage. IRA. Savings. That's when I saw it, their quiet math. Apartment equity. Exactly how if you tilt a head a certain way you can calculate a life. "Special people," I said almost to myself. That was the phrase, right? Alina blinked, just once. "Excuse me?" "Your wedding," I said, keeping my voice level. "Only special people were invited." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mrs. Rivera, our focus is your well-being. There's been erratic spending, missed calls, a wellness check may—" Erratic? I picked up the bank printouts, my pencil still marking totals from last week. $540 a month for rent. 34 months. 18,000. 360. Groceries. 5,400. Emergencies, 3,200. Furniture, gifts call it 30,000 and change. I know where every dollar went. It walked out my door carrying my last name. Evan shifted. "Mom, this isn't about money." "It's never about money," I said. "Until it is." The lawyer slid the POA toward me with a pen aligned like a scalpel. "A signature will keep things from getting complicated. If not, the court can appoint a guardian. No one wants that." "Oh." I looked at Evan, my baby with a man's beard, and saw in the set of his jaw something I'd taught him years ago. Hold steady. Somehow he'd learned it against me. "Tell me," I said soft. "When you stood there on that rooftop beside your wife, did you think of me as confused then? Or did that part start when the auto transfer stopped?" Alina's mouth tightened. The lawyer's pen didn't move. I leaned back, let the stillness gather. "I may have been blind for years," I said, each word trimmed and true, "but now I can see you all clearer than ever." The room changed temperature. It was the smallest, cleanest reversal, as if the light finally chose sides. If you've ever found truth in the quiet moments after pain, I said to the air, maybe to myself, maybe to whoever still believes in the soft power of facts. You know what this part feels like. And to everyone who keeps stories like this breathing, thank you. Your kindness keeps hope alive for people learning to speak again after betrayal. Alina tried for a laugh that didn't make it. This is dramatic, Jessica. Drama is what people call it, I said when they meet the record. I uncapped the pen, weighed it in my hand, and for one small second, watched all the futures they wanted scroll across their faces. Sunlit kitchens they hadn't paid for. Dinners charged to accounts they didn't own. The soft, easy life they believed they deserved because I'd made it look easy to keep them alive. Then I set the pen down. I lifted the POA by its corner, felt the weight of their plan in a single dumb sheaf of paper, then let it fall into the trash under the table. The sound it made was nothing, a whisper of surrender they didn't get. I stood. Get out, I said, very low. No yelling. No scene. Just a door, a corridor of winter light, and 3 people who finally understood what power sounds like when it comes from truth. After they left, the walls took a long breath, and so did I. No tears, no shaking. Just the metronome tick of the cheap wall clock and the soft lift and fall of my own lungs. I sat where the lawyer had sat, smoothed the tablecloth he'd wrinkled, and faced the room like a battlefield I'd reclaimed. Sunlight leaked through the blinds in thin, steady bars. A chair sat empty across from me. The coffee in my cup had gone cold hours ago, a little circle of dark calm. There comes a point when silence stops, meaning defeat. It becomes preparation. I wiped the ring of coffee off the table and stood. The apartment felt different, tighter, cleaner, like the air had decided to pick a side. I spoke out loud, to no one. Okay, I said. Now we do this right. First, I called Attorney Wu. The voice on the other end was calm, surgical. Document everything, she said. Times, dates, exact words. Keep your voice steady and your paper trail loud. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Understood. Then I began. Action 1, the money. I sat at my desk, opened the laptop, and started cutting cords. Auto transfers, off. Linking accounts, severed. New passwords, long as a prayer. 2-factor codes pinging my phone like a string of small victories. I opened a new account at a different bank entirely, the kind of quiet place that never asks questions if your paperwork is right. Each keystroke felt like a stitch closing a wound. Every keystroke is a knife cutting the chains. For years I mistook generosity for love. Now, I'm learning the quiet math of self-respect. Action 2, the doors. I called the locksmith on the corner who still takes cash and keeps his talk to a minimum. The old cylinder came out with a dry screech. The new one clicked into place like a spine realigning. I installed a camera doorbell, simple, unassuming. The kind that blinks once when it sees a face. I watched that small light and felt the day tilt in my favor. Action 3, the record. I opened a hardbound notebook and wrote on the first page, logbook, date, time, who called, what they said. My pen moved quietly but with weight, like I was printing my name on a deed. I added screenshots, you forgot to transfer. A clip of a rooftop kiss with her parents in the frame. A voicemail about guardianship if I didn't cooperate. I slid each printout into a plastic sleeve and let the pages get heavy with their own truth. Action 4, the lawyer's letter. Attorney Wu emailed a draft. Cease and desist. Harassment. Unauthorized entry. Coercion attempts. I read it slowly, twice, then felt something open in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. Not joy. Not anger. Alignment. I printed it, clipped it, and set it on the counter, ready to mail if the next knock came the wrong way. Action 5, the mind. I want a capacity exam, I told Wu. Independent, reputable. Good, she said. You insist on it, not them. We booked it for next week with a geriatric psychologist she trusts. Not because I owed anyone proof of my mind, but because I owed myself the paper that shuts down liars. The phone started around noon. His name first, then hers. Then unknown numbers, pings, rings, vibrations racing each other across the table. I watched the screen light up, then go dark, then light up again. I didn't answer. I poured fresh coffee, sat in the patch of sun by the window, and let the phone do its dance. Texts rolled in like weather. Mom, pick up. This is getting out of hand. Jessica, the landlord needs the transfer today. You're making this worse. People are concerned. If we don't settle this, we'll have to talk to the court. I lifted my cup and took a slow sip. It's funny how silence can sound like thunder when guilt starts to echo. I didn't block them. I didn't respond. I let their words gather in the logbook where they belonged, evidence, not emergencies. Across the room, the chair they'd used sat a little crooked. I didn't move it back. Let it look wrong. Let it remind me. In the afternoon, the locksmith finished and handed me a small paper envelope with 2 new keys. I turned one in the lock once, twice, feeling the pins align. That sound, that small metal whisper, was better than applause. It was the sound of a life that would no longer open for anyone, just because they acted like they belonged. I wrote another line in the logbook. Locks changed. I underlined it. I spent an hour sorting accounts. Old statements filed. New alerts set to ping only me. I called the utility companies and updated information they never needed but always ask for. Each call ended with the same line. "You're all set now, ma'am." I hung up and let myself enjoy the word set. It meant I wasn't improvising anymore. By evening, the calls turned syrupy. "We love you. We're family." It's not that serious. Love is a word I take seriously, so I wrote it in the logbook too, because you document everything, especially the words they only use when they want something. They taught me that love meant giving. Today, I'm teaching myself that love can also mean stopping. And that did sting. The kind of sting that tells you the cut is clean. As the light thinned, I stood in my small kitchen and reheated a bowl of soup I could finally taste. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt possible. The apartment was quiet, but not the scary kind anymore. This was the quiet of a stage between scenes, the hush just before the curtain rises again. I rinsed my bowl, set it upside down to dry, and went to the window. The city had dropped its afternoon noise to a low, warm hum. Somewhere, a saxophone got brave on a fire escape. Streetlights blinked awake. In the glass, I saw my face, tired, lined, steady, and the thin silver of morning still hanging in my eyes. For the first time all day, I let a small smile happen. Not a victory grin. A recognition. The old me had waited for permission. The new me wrote her own. The buzzer jolted. A long, official-sounding ring. I watched the door camera on my phone flicker to life. A young woman in a city jacket, clipboard in hand, badge lanyard glinting. She looked up at the lens like she'd practiced the face. "Mrs. Rivera?" The speaker crackled. "City Senior Services. We received a report you might be at risk. I need to conduct a wellness check." In the kitchen, the cease and desist sat ready. On my desk, the logbook lay open. In my email, an appointment confirmation from Attorney Wu blinked politely. On the chair by the door, an envelope addressed and stamped, waiting to move. I took one steady breath and pressed the intercom. My voice was calm, almost kind. "One moment," I said. "I'll be right there." For the first time, I didn't need them to hear me. My silence had already spoken. The city was bright and clinical, that morning winter light cutting clean lines across the rug. I set the evidence binder on the coffee table and sat where I could see the door, the clock, and myself reflected faintly in the TV's black screen. The buzzer rang. A soft official knock followed, like a gavel that hadn't learned to be loud yet. I opened the door to a young woman in a city badge and sensible shoes. Clipboard. Tired kindness. "Mrs. Rivera, I'm with Senior Services. We received a report you may be at risk. Is now an okay time?" "It is," I said. "Come in. We'll do this in the light." She took the chair at an angle, so she could see the room. Eyes flicked to the new door camera, the tidy kitchen. Somewhere, a radiator breathed out its thin, faithful hiss. The questions came in a steady, memorized rhythm. "Do you pay your own bills?" I slid over a stack. Paid electric, paid gas, paid phone, each stamped received. "Medication?" "Vitamins, occasionally aspirin." I pointed to a pill organizer with 3 compartments filled, labeled in my handwriting. "Groceries?" I showed last week's receipts, dates circled. "Medical support?" I turned a page. "Capacity evaluation booked for Thursday," the letterhead crisp, the time underlined. When she finished the checklist, I opened my binder and let the pages do their work. A harassment log in ink and timestamps, bank statements showing the years of auto transfers and the day I ended them. screenshots of the rooftop wedding with her parents in frame, texts, "You forgot to transfer," and a voicemail hinting at guardianship if I didn't cooperate. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The social worker read, "Slow and careful," papers whispered. The clock ticked. Winter light kept its straight face. She closed her folder. Looked at me. Then at the binder. Then back at me. "We're closing this," she said. Not a question, a conclusion. I showed her to the door. The apartment inhaled and held it. In the hallway, her shoes were soft against the tile. When the door latched, I stood a moment longer, listening to the quiet. It had a new weight. The kind that leans toward truth. 1 week later, family court. The courtroom wore its fluorescence like a cold smile, gray carpet, pale walls, a flag pinned by still air. People glanced at me with the look you give a problem you've already solved. Alina arrived in black, camera-ready sorrow. Evan in the suit I'd once paid for, the tie slightly off, jaw clenched. Their lawyer was polished nothing out of place, except the story he was about to tell. When the clerk called my name, the lawyer rose. His voice had that careful gravity men use when they want to sound like truth itself. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter of elder vulnerability. Mrs. Rivera has been confused and unduly influenced by neighbors and a predatory attorney. She installed surveillance, cut off contact, stopped reasonable support, and is isolating. We seek temporary guardianship for her own safety." He sat, satisfied. Alina dabbed her eye with a linen handkerchief she did not need. Evan looked at his hands. I did nothing but breathe until it was my turn. "Our side called witnesses like you lay bricks you're going to stand on. Mr. Patel from the bank, steady as a metronome. Her activity is consistent, deliberate, and responsible. She's not a risk, she's a record. Miss Torres from across the hall. She's present, organized. If there's anything unusual, it's how politely she keeps her boundaries. The geriatric psychologist's capacity report clear, clinical, merciless to lies. The binder again, pages turning, the story assembling itself without adjectives, dates, transfers, autopay histories, the day the faucet turned off. Their side tried to make theater out of shadows. A neighbor who didn't like my camera, she's paranoid. A pharmacist who'd signed something he didn't read. I was told it was for insurance. The social worker's absence said the rest. When I finally stood, the room fell into that held breath I've come to trust. I didn't give them a speech, I gave them math. $540 a month for rent, I said, looking at the judge and only the judge. 34 months. 18,360. Groceries about 5,400. Emergencies 3,200. Furniture and gifts, call it 30,000. Not charity. Family. I stopped when family became a billing cycle. I let the numbers sit. Numbers always do what they're told. Alina's lawyer asked if I'd become paranoid. I told him the door camera cost less than the running balance of their entitlement. He asked if I'd been influenced by a predatory attorney. I told him my attorney's predatory skill was limited to paperwork and timelines, both of which the court had in front of it. He reached for the old words. Confused. Unsafe. Isolated. I said the new ones. Documented. Examined. Capable. I'm for. He asked if I felt love for my son. I let the question be what it was, a tug toward spectacle. Love has nothing to do with guardianship, I said. But since you asked, yes, enough to finally teach him the difference between help and extraction. The judge's face didn't move, but something in the room did. The temperature, the angle of attention, the energy that says a tide has decided which way it's going. Alina spoke then, the line polished to a shine. She's not herself anymore. I turned, slow, and looked at her like she wasn't a performance but a person I once tried to believe. I agree, I said. I am not the woman who paid you to call it love. Silence, pure, hard, correct. The judge folded his hands, papers shuffled. Somewhere, a pen clicked. He looked at the petition, then at me, then at the petition again, as if checking the spelling of a simple word. Petition for guardianship denied, he said. Rights fully intact. No gavel, no choir. The sound was a page turning, but I felt that sentence land in my bones like a door key fitting a lock. Alina stared at the floor like the truth might be hiding there. Evan blinked too many times and didn't once look at me. Their lawyer nodded, professional surrender, already rearranging his briefcase into dignity. I didn't gloat. I put my binder in my bag the way you put away a tool you will always know how to use. I left the courtroom with the same steps I'd brought in, measured, unhurried, mine. After. In the late afternoon back home, the light had softened to the color of mercy. I took the pink dress from the closet. It didn't make my chest ache anymore. It was just fabric that needed another story. I folded it once, twice, and slipped it into a donation bag with the gentleness you reserve for something that belonged to a version of you who tried very hard. On the way out, the hallway smelled faintly of laundry soap and winter. I carried the bag like it weighed nothing. The door clicked behind me. No parade. No witnesses. Just the honest silence that follows a truth finally said out loud. If you're listening closely, you could hear it. The clock. A page. A breath. And then the kind of stillness you only earn. I didn't need anyone to see me walking. But I walked like a woman wearing her name again. After the verdict, silence became my favorite sound. Not the frightened kind that used to press its hands over my mouth, but the clean hush of a room that has finally chosen truth. It felt like justice breathing slow, certain, unhurried. I moved through the apartment with ordinary grace, as if the floor itself had steadied for me. The clock on the wall ticked the same as it did yesterday. The difference was that I no longer flinched when it counted what I had left. The first notices arrived within 48 hours. Building security slid a memo under my door, formal language, cool and precise. Per management policy, Evan and Alina are not permitted on your floor without your written consent. A second page confirmed that anyone attempting wellness checks without appointment would be turned away and logged. I filed both pages behind a pale blue divider labeled boundaries. Paper, at last, doing what family wouldn't. Next, the landlord, not mine, theirs. An email chain forwarded to my attorney by mistake, and then by design. Please remit rent directly. Third-party transfers are not authorized. I didn't reply. It wasn't my conversation anymore. I closed the laptop and listened to the radiator hiss like a well-fed cat settling in. By the end of the week, the credit card statements that once arrived fat with mystery payments went thin, a zero where a habit used to be. It's interesting how quickly the world remembers its math when the free line item disappears. I didn't celebrate. I watered the basil on the sill, folded 2 towels, and let the afternoon light turn the laminate floor a shade of honey. News travels without asking your permission. I heard things the way you hear rain through city pipes, distorted at first, then unmistakable. A friend of a friend said Alina had taken a part-time shift at a neighborhood shop, the kind with humming refrigerators and a bell that rings too loudly when the door opens. Nothing wrong with work. Only the surprise in her voice when people expected it of her. Evan sold his car, the one-day-soon car, to clear a late balance. He told someone it was a temporary cash flow correction. People nodded and checked their watches. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt accurate. Like gravity doing the job no one has to supervise. They used to whisper that I'd lost my mind. Now they avoid their own reflections. I picture the two of them at a kitchen table that isn't paid for anymore, holding a stack of thin mail and thicker blame. Greed has a way of turning every alliance into solitary confinement. At first, they were a team, always we, always us. Now, rumor says, it's down to you and me, and why didn't you, and how could you? The same mouths that rehearsed special people now practice apologies with no audience. I did not need to ruin them. Their lies had already done that. The immediate blowback came neatly, almost politely. Security called to confirm the log entry. 2 attempts to reach my floor, both declined, both time-stamped. You're protected, the guard said. The phrase landed like a blanket folded at the foot of a bed I could finally sleep in. The landlord sent one more line. Direct pay only moving forward, then fell blessedly silent. A bank message lit up my phone. Account changes confirmed. Recipient removed. It read like a benediction. Then the text I knew would come, the last pitch from a voice that no longer startled me. Alina. We should heal this, Jessica. Maybe dinner? Just us 3. No lawyers. Just family. I looked at that word family, like a glass I had finally learned not to pick up. I scrolled to the photo I'd saved from the courthouse folder. The judge's order, crisp and centered. I attached it, typed 6 words, and pressed send. Me, I'm finally busy. Take care. The screen stayed still. A minute later, the read receipt arrived like a door clicking shut. You can watch karma if you're patient. It doesn't announce itself, it just keeps its appointment. I saw it in small ways how people who once co-signed their version of events began to take longer sips of coffee, longer pauses between words. An old photo on their social feed vanished, the rooftop grin, the champagne, the caption that used to crow number chosen family. A neighbor mentioned seeing Evan at the curb, stiff-backed, while a thin wedding frame leaned against a trash can. Wind lifted the corner of a print and flipped it face down. No need to step closer. Some pictures improve that way. In the privacy of their living room, I imagine a ring slipping from warm fingers to a cold floor, a tiny metal echo that sounds bigger when you know it's the wrong promise. A lamp on a timer casts a weak, flickering light across a couch they can't afford anymore. The room looks larger without the self-delusion. I never went to see. I didn't need the satisfaction. Abstinence is also a kind of power. People ask me if I'm angry. I tell them yes, and I mean it in the past tense. Anger was the spark that let me see the wires. Clarity is what turned on the light. These days I take my coffee outside, on the stoop, and learn again the rhythm of not rushing. Miss? Torres drops 2 sugar packets in my palm like contraband. We don't talk about courtrooms or petitions. We talk basil, laundry, a sale on good sheets 3 blocks over. The ordinary becomes a salve when you've bled from the extraordinary. I am not naive. Consequences don't make saints, they make space. Enough room, finally, for respect to return if it ever intends to on my terms. If it doesn't, the air is still breathable. I boxed the binder and slid it onto a high shelf, not erased, archived. When you do things properly, there's nothing to hide, and plenty to keep. On Sundays, I walk by the thrift store where I dropped the pink dress. It lives on a headless mannequin in the front window now, lit by tired bulbs. Sometimes a young woman stands on the sidewalk and points at it. I don't stop. Not because I'm cold, but because the story I bought that dress for has already been told, and the one I'm living doesn't need it. I pass an alley and a gust of wind sends a curled photograph skating across the concrete. It spins, pauses, then slides into a drain, the image dissolving into gray. If there's a moral in that, I don't force it. Karma works quietly. The city helps. At home, I open the window. The room fills with a soft evening draft. Somewhere, a child laughs. Somewhere else, somebody argues about nothing. The soundscape of a place that keeps moving, even when you stop to breathe. I set the kettle on. The flame steadies. The pot begins its low, honest rumble. I look at my hands, older, lined, useful, and at the tabletop, cleared of papers that never deserve to be there. Justice doesn't ask you to dance. It asks you to stand and then sit and then live. I don't track Evan and Alina anymore. Information comes and goes. A new address, a different number, a rumor of separate rooms. Once, a mutual acquaintance said they were working on themselves. I wished them luck and meant it. Growth is not my enemy. Entitlement was. This is the part of the story where some people expect gloating. I keep my dignity instead. I fold the dish towel over the oven handle and watch the sunlight slide off the counter like a curtain falling in a small theater when the play finally ends on the line it always deserved. I didn't need to ruin them. Time and truth handled the bookkeeping. I just stopped paying their deficit. The wind knocks lightly at the window and moves on. I sit with it for a moment, and then I don't. The basil needs trimming. A friend is coming by with peaches. Life is small again, exactly the size it should be when it fits inside your own name. Some debts don't need to be collected. Life has its own way of balancing the books. After the noise fades, what's left isn't victory, it's understanding. There was no applause after the court, no confetti for common sense. Just the quiet I had been chasing for years, finally catching up to me and sitting down beside me like an old friend who doesn't ask questions. The clock kept its steady beat. The city exhaled against my windows. And inside that ordinary rhythm, I could hear my life, not the part spent bleeding for other people, but the part that still belonged to me. In the days that followed, I did small, stubborn things. I repainted the living room 2 coats of a soft bone white that catches the afternoon sun and throws it back gently. I opened the windows and let the scent of new paint mingle with coffee and the steam from a little pot of lentils. I took Miss Torres to the Albanian bakery on 18th Ave, the one with the warm bayrak, and the owner who calls everyone Zemmer like love is a word you can use without taking anything from it. We ate on the sidewalk, napkins fluttering, the world going by. People spoke fast and laughed louder. It felt like proof that life doesn't need permission to continue. Back home, I planted basil on the fire escape, 3 small pots in a line, a green procession. Even now, when the wind moves through them, the leaves knock together like quiet applause. I kept promises to myself. I updated my will, a portion set aside for organizations that protect elders from family financial abuse. The rest in a trust with conditions clear enough to read without a lawyer. Respect is mandatory. Coercion voids the gift. I initialed every page, date, and time like a stamp. It didn't feel vindictive. It felt clean. I kept a few sentences close, pocket-sized and ready, like bus fare for the soul. Love without respect is a bill I won't pay. Silence is not surrender. Sometimes it's a fuse. I didn't buy justice. I stopped financing injustice. That last one sits in me like warm stone. I didn't win by outshouting anyone. I won by stopping. I won't pretend I never wanted them to hurt. There were nights when I held that anger like a hot coal, just to feel something I could name. But the truth is simpler, plainer, kinder. Justice isn't about watching them fall. It's about standing again without hate. The day I understood that, a window opened in my chest and the air changed. I could breathe without apology. I look back at the long road, the betrayal I didn't see coming, the slow erasure, the numbing quiet, the meticulous return. And what I remember most is not the courtroom lines or the final sentence. It's the everyday grit, the way you keep waking up. The way you eat something warm even when food tastes like paper. The way you keep track of dollars, of days, of yourself, until the ledger finally balances. I used to believe love meant giving everything. Now I know love also means knowing when to stop. Stop paying with pieces of yourself. Stop mistaking your heart for an ATM. Stop staying in rooms where respect has been evicted. There is a particular relief that comes with boundaries. It's not loud. It's the sound of a lock clicking the first time after new keys. It's the knowledge that you can choose who crosses your threshold into your home, into your time, into your peace. Some mornings I talk to Robert, not out loud exactly, but in that private register widows learn to use. I finally did what you would have wanted, I tell him. I chose peace over pride. The light through the blinds falls across the table like something sacred, and I let a small forgiveness move through me, not because anyone earned it, but because I did. Forgiveness isn't a pardon. It's unclenching your hand and discovering your fingers still work. When I send money now, it is deliberate, not dutiful. When I give time, it is because I want to be there. And when I say no, that most honest of words, I say it with affection for the version of me that didn't know how. My story is not unique. That's its power. The truth is, there are a million kitchens like mine, a million mothers who learned the hard way that kindness without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. If my story teaches anything, let it be this. Strength isn't a voice raised, it's a line drawn. And once you draw it, you don't need to shout. You just stand there, and the world adjusts. I didn't lock my heart. I locked my door. There's a difference. Evan knows it. I left a path, narrow and straight. If he lives a full year on his own, steady work, counseling, no borrowed dollars and no borrowed truths, we talk, not before, not with middlemen. Not in a restaurant where the check sits like a test. In the kitchen I paid for with the window open and the basil leaning in, he can come as a man, or not come at all. Alina will learn her lessons wherever she stands. Work will teach her the arithmetic. I was foolish enough to cover not to punish her, but so she can meet her own reflection without a receipt in her hand. On good days the city sounds like recovery, a cart rolling over cracked pavement, pigeons arguing, a child laughing at something only a child would think is funny. On better days, I notice the quiet between those sounds and realize the quiet is mine. One afternoon, I walked by the thrift shop again. The pale pink dress I once bought for a life I wasn't invited to hung in the window on a headless mannequin, the fabric catching a soft current from the door. A young woman stopped, smiled at it, and stepped inside. I could see her in the mirror, the way she turned a little to the left, then to the right. It looked right on her like a beginning, not an apology. I didn't go in. I kept walking, light on my feet. At home, I stood on the fire escape. The basil was generous. The sky put on a small show. Yellow tilting to gold, gold to apricot, apricot to the kind of pink that forgives the day for ending. I listened to the traffic recede into a soft wash, to a radio drifting from somewhere, to a lone bird insistent on its own song. The air touched my face like a promise kept. After the noise fades, what's left isn't victory, it's understanding, that I am allowed to enjoy my life, that love and respect are twins. If one is missing, the other limps. That silence can be a fuse, but peace is the light that follows. If you've ever lost yourself trying to love someone who only saw your worth in numbers, I hope my story reminds you, it's never too late to choose yourself. Thank you for keeping these stories alive, stories where justice doesn't shout, it heals. Justice gave me back my name. But peace gave me back myself.